Hello, my name is Carol May Whittick, your creativity and spiritual life coach and your host of Her Conversations, Tools for the Awakening. Her is an acronym for Higher Energetic Resonance. This is the optimal state to embody in order to attract our highest desires. What is the awakening? This is the moment in time when humanity rises up out of the darkness. Who is awakening? Each one of us present on earth today, reclaiming our sovereignty, seeking greater possibilities in our reality and looking for solutions. We know being awakened is not a lofty ideal but a necessity. If we can transform ourselves, we can change the world. Guests on Her Conversations will speak to your spirituality, sensuality and soul. Listen to their stories and hear how they are in service to the world. Let their words and these conversations embolden and inspire you. Before this week's episode with Natasha Black, I would just like to invite you to listen to Her Inspirations, which is the sister podcast to this title. In each solo episode, I aim to inspire my midlife sisters to recognize and embrace the wisdom of our experience and allow this next season of life to be the most free and fruitful. Midlife is your time to bloom. My guest this week is Natasha Black. She is a channel and healing practitioner dedicated to helping individuals access their inner wisdom and spirituality. Her approach is grounded and accessible, enabling clients to embody their innate gifts and wisdom. During our conversation, Natasha shares how her journey as a healer is deeply influenced by her near-death experience, where she encountered the essence of unconditional love, and about the changes that are happening in our world as people awaken to our true reality. So as always, I begin by asking my guests, Her is an acronym for Higher Energetic Resonance. When do you feel your higher energetic resonance?
When I am in flow, I feel that resonance when I am completely surrendered. I'm in flow. I'm in my space of really dedication of my spiritual practices. I'm aware of taking my time with things. I'm not feeling into the stress of things. So yeah, I feel like that really brings my most highest energetic resonance.
Perfect. And before we go deeper into our conversation, Tash, I just want to give you an opportunity to share a little bit about your story and how you came to be doing the work that you're doing today.
When I left school, I started studying massage therapy. And of course, through that, I started learning more about energy, alternative methods, and how I grew up was in a religious setting. So I had one kind of frame of spirituality, I guess you could call it. And so studying massage therapy really took me into a different framing of what spirituality looks like. And it really kind of opened my eyes to how things could work, but it was more of an exploration. Like I was finding myself, so the very first book I remember reading was The Celestine Prophecy. And it was incredible. I was blown away by it. And I found myself constantly playing with energy and what that looked like and just trying meditation and seeing how that felt. And I was really noticing that it was changing my frequency. It was opening my eyes to different ways of seeing things, different ways of living, being tuned in to everything around you so that, now I would call it like speaking the language of the universe, like noticing synchronicities and all of those things. So I went into study doing that. Then I, for some reason, went away from those alternative therapies. I went traveling overseas. I was a flight attendant for 6 years, and that was great. I went to travel the world and had a great time doing so. I went into the party scene over there, I didn't have any responsibilities really. You're quite looked after over there. So it was a fun time in my life, and had my family away from home there. And then I came back home, settled down with my husband. We had 2 children. And after my first child, I started noticing certain mindsets, and I was introduced to this, what's it called? Network marketing company. And along with that, if anyone's been in those companies before, you go along to all of these personal development events, and that was incredible. I was so blown away by the content that was coming forward. I learned so much about myself in a couple of years, and that really pushed my spiritual and personal growth to a whole other level. I was uncovering shadows. I was going through limiting beliefs, all the stuff that we have learned about on our journey. And I would say it was very surface level spiritual development, doing the journaling, understanding, tiny bits of manifestation, but just getting to know myself. And now my children are 11 and 9. And for the last, I would say 10 years, I have been deeply, deeply seeking spiritual truth. And so I obviously came out of flight attending, which I don't think I mentioned, came out of network marketing and went to go into coaching. I didn't know the world of coaching existed, but during my time in network marketing, I was coaching people through a program, and that was my most favorite part. But I was noticing that a lot of people were getting stuck in a specific area. And I kept saying, I really want to help these people, but for some reason we can't get through these blocks, all these limiting beliefs. I didn't call it that back then because I didn't know what it was. And so someone said something to me about coaching, and I said, I've never heard of coaching before. So then I did an NLP course, and that really just started my whole journey of proper deep seeking spiritual development, coaching, really helping people on a whole other level. And at the time that I left network marketing, I felt like I really want to give this knowledge to others now. Like, it's done so much for me. I really want to help others and just take them on the journey that I've been on, hoping that it will help someone. So that's kind of the space. That's how it all started. I've come in and out of certain types of things, learned other modalities, and but I'm still doing massage therapy. I'm doing energy healing now, and I'm doing mentoring. It's just evolved in a deeper way. But yeah, that's how I started, and this is where I am now.
Perfect. You call yourself a new earth healer, and I want you to really just elaborate on what that means for you and also why you feel it's relevant now.
So, new earth for me, this term I know is spoken about a lot. The way that I frame this is that I like to demystify it as well. So we're just moving into a space of evolution. And that's really how I see New Earth. It's like we're just moving into a new type of consciousness where, we're wanting to create healthy structures in society, from politics, religion, schooling, serving, medicine, all of these structures, just moving it towards a more holistic or more rounded, inclusive, loving way. And so that evolution is really a reflection of new earth consciousness to me. So what we are doing is we're just tapping into the highest frequency of love, compassion, understanding, kindness. But also, one of the things that's the basis of all of my work is true empowerment. So really showing people what is already inside of them that they can access on their own. We came into this world being able to access our innate knowledge, our innate wisdom, our innate gifts. understanding the human potential. So this is all part of the new earth consciousness that I'm trying to promote along with so many other people. It's very exciting. So yeah, it's a whole other level of empowerment. And, you know, one of the biggest things I love talking about is the human infinite potential, because we don't even understand what we're capable of yet. I'm still learning more. I think we'll be learning for a whole lifetime, but it is relevant now because we're being bombarded every day with information. And speaking of this side of it, of how we are a victim, you know, how we're victims to systems of control, or how we're victims of the matrix, or, you know, however you want to say it. And so, you know, even the health, I know in this community, people feel disillusioned or they feel discouraged by the way things are going. But if we understood what we're capable of, how we can actually alchemize energy within us, how we can access higher states of knowledge, we can create this new earth. And so something that people don't understand enough is that we already have the power as a collective. The only difference is that not enough of us are rising up, you know, to actually create those systems of change. If 80% of the world woke up tomorrow and we all had a pact with each other and said, let's, you know, stop, just for a silly example, let's stop paying taxes, let's, you know, stop feeding this company that doesn't have our best interests at heart, we would create a revolution overnight and things would change. But, you know, there's a process to get there. There's mindsets that need to change to get there. There's a lot of fear to remove to get there. You know, if we take away those things, we're still, even though we maybe want to, we still have these fears that, oh, if I don't, that means my security is taken away from me. You know, so that's an example of why I feel that I'm passionate about sharing this information, because if we understand what we're capable of, we can understand more of what we can do every day to create these changes and come together in collaboration and community.
Yeah. All my language, you know, and it's one of those things to feel in your bones that this is not only what has to happen, but it's possible to happen. No, it's an ideal that I've just had in my mind for as long as I can remember. If people could just see how good they could be, it would make a difference. How do you introduce the idea to someone who's coming at you with all the yeah but this, yeah but that, you know, so that you've got a very clear vision in your mind of how things can go. You can almost feel it, and you know that it's almost like you're duty bound. This is the reason that you're here, to do the things that you're doing. So how can you, or what do you bring to somebody who's like, yeah, but, you know, the government, and yeah, but, you know, if I don't pay my taxes, they'll come round and snatch my house, and yeah, but if I don't take this medicine, then I'll die. And, you know, like all of the reasons that people are still bought into the things that are clearly not for our benefit, but what are you able to show them, or how do you start to open up that chink of awareness within them that outside of the limitations of the beliefs that we've got that seem so solid that if we don't have them, we'll perish without them? How are you showing them that there's something on the other side of that?
Yeah, so one thing that, you know, you mentioned was beliefs. So, you know, in lots of indigenous healing, ancient cultures, ancient wisdom, they talk about the mind being the most powerful thing. And this is in so many different ancient texts that I've explored myself. That one of the first Hermetic principle is the mind, you know, talking about the mind. So we first have to understand what is possible through the mind, how our beliefs shape our reality, and not just saying that as like, yeah, our beliefs create our reality, like really feeling and understanding what that means. So for me, going on this journey of deep self-exploration and understanding and seeing changes in my own life of what happens when I change my beliefs. This is what gives me the clear vision. This is what gives me the belief that things are possible, tapping into community around me that have these similar mindsets, listening to things every day that builds that belief. Something that I really talk about is staying away from, sometimes even alternative media can be fear-based, and it definitely has its place, 100%, but we have to be careful to not stay in that, oh, what's happening now, and move more into the know thyself, which is something a lot of the ancient traditions and cultures talk about, is you have to know thyself to understand what we're capable of, to be able to see that vision and actually zoom out and see that what we're focusing on is more or less the drama of it rather than creating the change. Something I always talk about as well is that when I do, and I do have clients that feel discouraged quite often, and we work on things like, okay, what are you watching every day? What are you listening to? How are you learning more about what you can do? How do you step into your own purpose to know that and have that belief that you are creating a new earth, or you are moving towards that vision with everybody else that's doing it? If we're disconnected from our purpose, and when I say purpose, I don't mean just career, it's like, what is that for you? What is your deepest joy and happiness? It could be art, it doesn't matter. It's just these frequencies really, when we're all doing that, it really creates change. So, I ask them all these questions. What are the things that you are doing personally in your life to help create that vision, rather than seeing from the outside, oh, what's changing, what's not, oh, this is not changing, because then we're expecting everything else to change so that we can be happy. Whereas we actually need to find it within ourselves to then, for it then to ripple out, and then you will inspire a friend, you'll inspire someone on social media. But something I do say to these people often is, look for the changes that are already happening. I turn on social media, or I see ads on Google of people that are creating these sustainable, conscious businesses. I see a new one like nearly every week. So it's just things like that where you just notice the little changes that are already happening. So, and when I say this to people, this really does help them see things in a different way, but also to know that evolution, it is not an overnight thing. We have to be patient as well, but do definitely notice the changes. And if you're not, and you're feeling discouraged and hopeless and sad, because, there's no covering some of the things that are happening now, those things do have to come up for us to heal it and see it and know where to go in and help if those people are called in to help. But watch things as well that's going to restore your faith in humanity or the evolution. So yeah, that's something that it really helps me. And I know it helps my clients too, because then they'll go, oh yeah, like I got stuck on social media and I'm seeing all these things from the news, and, it feels like we're not going anywhere. But, then when I say, look at this, this just happened last week. Did you say that? See that? Sorry. And then they'll go, no. And I'm like, okay, follow that page. Like, this page has good news happening every day. It's like showing you people that are going in and boots on the ground in specific areas. And then you feel like you're part of a collaborative team on planet Earth working towards the evolution.
Got it. Yeah. I like what you said about alternative media, because it's almost like a what do I want to call it? Almost like a catchment area where people look at like the mainstream narrative and then kind of fall out of that. and then still take their habits into like the alternative space, still expecting the alternative space to do the work of the mainstream, and it can in itself keep you trapped there a little bit too long if you're not careful, because
Yep.
people just kind of jump from, out of the frying pan into the fire, basically, where everything's new. And it serves its purpose because then it gives you an alternative view of things. But then also, I see how people do get caught in that area. So they've just kind of jumped from one thing to another and then are not moving forward. And in those alternative spaces, it's also time to have discernment, even more discernment before, the discernment that took you out of the everyday narrative, you
Yep.
have to carry with you. And then if anything, actually be more discerning the second
Yep.
time around, because I see areas within alternative that are maybe even more controlled and more diverting than
Yes.
mainstream.
Yep.
And if you're not asking questions of what you're watching and what you're expecting, and the motives of the people who are giving you this information, because initially it's great. It's like you find something that's not that. So it feels like a new home. But I think that's the point when the deep work really, really needs to happen.
Yep.
And you, as you're reconfiguring your world, because to step away from mainstream to go into a different narrative in itself is a big shock anyway, because you have to look at everything in your life and question everything. And the areas within that can get pretty shady, especially if you don't have any personal strength. You can either just decide that nothing is true, and go like, okay, I reject everything, nothing is true,
Yep.
or that everything is bad, and so you go from the blue pill to the red pill to the black pill, and everything is bad. But
Yep.
there's doom slayers within that area as well. And the only way through that is to be, like you said, to be able to pull out and maybe balance all of the things and
Yeah,
kind
and
of
that's
like,
sorry,
no,
please
no,
keep
go
going.
on.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's important what you said is the balance. And if we're speaking of higher perspectives, there is no, this realm doesn't exist without balance.
Mm,
And so you do need to have this side to understand the other side.
mm,
It's like we don't know what hot water is unless we feel the cold.
mhm,
And so this is something as well that it needs context because, and, you know, I know people get stuck in those cycles of doom and gloom. And, it can be very hard to see something that's been happening for centuries and centuries and centuries come up. It's very jolting. It's
mm,
hurtful. You just want to help every person in humanity overnight, and it's heartbreaking to see some of the things that have been happening for a very long time. But the fact that it has been happening for a very long time, we're only seeing it now, has helped me personally to go, okay, I'm only just seeing this now, but it's always been happening.
mm,
Um, and it needs to come up. It's like our own shadows and our own healing. It has to come up so that I could be inspired to work in this specific area
mm,
in a certain part of the world. Like my heart is calling me to go and help these people. So this is how the light workers are called as well, to help in those spaces.
mm,
Um, yeah, but I don't blame anyone either for being stuck there, because it's hard to watch those things. We don't understand, we can't understand why people would do the things that they do.
mm,
But, it's, yeah, we have to stay focused on creating the new, not get stuck in that. And it's okay to grieve for humanity a little bit and feel that for a bit, you have to sometimes. But always keep in the back of your mind that there's something you can do. Maybe if it's just giving $5 or, sharing a post, to share awareness. It's just, what can you do to help move this forward a little bit and help those people that are really called to do that work?
mm. I think you said something important there as well about the idea of grieving something. and grieving the world that just didn't operate in the way that you were led to believe, and all of the things that come up with the grief of that as well. So maybe we're finding out, that thinking about things that are happening now about people that maybe we held in high esteem for so long, and really now discovering the truth of what their success was built on, and how many people were harmed as a result. And there's so many layers of that as well, and grieving the idea of having to have someone up there that kind of kept us having to look up to someone, and like leveling ourselves up to know that actually the adoration that we had for many people was deceptive, and then also grieving our own naivety, I believe, as well, of knowing that how can we now make sure that we don't just give away our attention and our adoration to people who are not deserving of that, and also being open to hear that things are not always as they seem. And I think the period of time that we're going through now, especially where like more and more things are being exposed, many of which have been like rumors for so long. I mean, there are things happening now that I just never thought would ever come to light, in terms of being able to have a conversation with anyone. It's like stuff that I've been hearing about for a long time, but you can't say, because we form these parasocial relationships with people who don't know us, wouldn't know us from a hole in the ground, but we spend all our time adoring them, and they've become part of our lives without them even realizing. And now we're seeing what they paid to have who they were. And so we also have to look at, we were complicit in their success in some way, and this is probably like a really hard thing to take on board, but how we were complicit in them being who they were, whether that's like, Hollywood or music or politics or medicine, or like every area is literally being shaken right now. And but we were complicit in having them there. And even though our complicity was part of our ignorance, now that we know, so we don't have to go around beating ourselves. Oh, we were fools. It's like we were cleverly fooled, because there are, like you say, so many areas of our own awareness that we don't understand. There are so many areas of our power that we don't understand, that are flipped back against us in terms of the way that we create our reality. Like, part of the puzzle is missing for us, and yet, the magic is being almost weaved in front of us, so we maintain this kind of us and them situation when that's not true. So it's then also doing the deeper work and admitting that we got fooled, like soothing our own egos, and realizing a lot of the time when we buy into narratives and ideologies, because they've hooked into a part of us that had an element of wounding or trauma. So then dealing with that and kind of healing that, so that the next time, someone comes around and tries to play that game again, you're like, no, I didn't see that, and it's not easy work to do. And I can see why many people don't want to, what we say, like wake up to the reality, because it means like everything has to crash down, and you don't know what you're holding on to. Your entire world has to shake, and there's that limbo period where you don't know whether you're going what's left or right. You're feeling shame and grief and embarrassment, and especially if you were defending these things against the people that are in your life.
100%. And that's there's so many good points here. I just wrote some notes here, but it's like being in a manipulative relationship. We're finally just seeing, like, was I fooled for that long? But, to not feel so bad about that for too long, because we were all born into this kind of a consciousness and world. So, like, you only know what you know. And, that's when people get frustrated too, with people not waking up. there's a process to this. It has to be done gently. It has to be done carefully. I think it's perfectly in divine timing. I don't think it should be any faster, and I don't think it should be any slower. The reason I don't think it should be faster is because, to be quite honest, we're not emotionally mature for the faster evolution yet. We need to learn, we're still learning how to regulate our emotions. We're still learning how to go and use nature, to ground ourselves and to neutralize our energy. We're still learning about how to do energy healing. So we're not mature for a rapid awakening. And the ones that are impatient, I so get it. But we have had time to process this information over years. The people that are only starting to see now, the rug's pulled out from underneath them, and they feel like you said, they're in this limbo. It's very scary. It's so, I think that our mental health state would be in a far worse condition if it was happening any quicker. So it is divine. It really is. And something I wanted to mention is, this is the transition phase of birthing. It's painful. You don't feel like you don't want to do it anymore. You're like, stop, stop, stop. But it's painful before the beautiful, outcome. But the other thing is too, like, on a soul level, all of these structures, all of these people that are involved in these structures, and not all of them are bad. There are some that are working in there that are working for the light and, trying to have their voice heard. But the ones that aren't, of the light, they are also working for the light by showing us what we don't want. So there is a level of compassion and understanding and even gratitude. And I know that might be such a jump for some people to comprehend right now, but can you imagine having to volunteer that journey for you to be so hated during this time of great awakening? And someone's just gone, yep, I'll play that role for humanity to wake up. And I'm not saying that we, what's the word I'm looking for? We accept and, things that are happening, we're wanting the change, but there is a level of compassion and gratitude that we can have for those people that have volunteered those positions because, and who knows what we've done in our past lives as well. What role? I know that I've had some where I wasn't, living in my highest resonance. So, it's thinking, this is what I mean by thinking above, like zooming out and thinking in a different perspective, because I think we need to. But yeah, it's very interesting, the points that you brought up. And yeah, it like you said, to not feel the shame or the guilt or, even the embarrassment of having once watched the news every day. I used to watch the news every day because that's what you do. You think, oh, this is how you stay informed. And then when you flip over to the alternative media, you're like, oh, this is how you stay informed.
Right.
But really, the information that's of your highest resonance is going within and understanding yourself, your relationship to yourself. What's your connection to God or the universe look like? How you connect to yourself is your divine connection to source and the universe. So yeah, I went on a bit of a tangent there, but I don't know if you want to ask anything else, but yeah.
No, it's fine. It's perfect. And when you were talking about alternative media, because I took for a while as well, I was producing content for an alternative platform as well. I did it for about 3 years.
Yep.
And it was interesting in that, one, it meant that I was immersed deeper than ever before in all of the alternative narrative as well. And it kind of saved me. It gave me something to do during lockdown, I tell you that much.
Yep.
as well. So because, with this, I really slowed down on this platform at the time because I was like, well, I don't want to just be having conversations for the sake of just keeping the numbers of the podcast going. There needs to be more going on. So I was putting out maybe one a month or something like that, but more talking about what I was seeing, because prior to that, I just always had an awareness through religion and through different modalities that there was going to be a time where something was going to shift. And I just didn't know what it was going to look like, you know? So I was always like, something's going to happen. Don't know what it's going to look like. What's it going to be? You know, are we just going to zoom off and be on a separate planet? Or, you know, like so many different people had spoken about it in so many different ways. And I think when it really kind of like really turned itself up was 2020, when it just really became people seeing one thing and some people seeing another thing. And it was just so powerful to witness how much of a trance the media could cast over people. And you know what, I was aware of it because I remember doing a media course when I was in my teens and learning how to edit, you know, back in the day. So I learned how to edit when I was 18, 19 years old, when you did it in a room. You know, you didn't do it on a laptop or anything like that. It was like Betamax tape. I learned how to edit on years ago, and I loved it. But one of the things that I really learned, one of the biggest takeaways from that course, was how you could change one piece of information. And one of the exercises that we had is we all had filming of the same thing, and then we all went off and we made something different. And just by doing that at 19 years old changed my mind completely. I always then looked at TV with one eye open. And prior to that as well, I grew up, there was a period of time when I grew up when we didn't have a TV just because it broke and like mum couldn't afford one. It was like the best thing that could have happened to me, because I really got into my imagination, really got into my creativity, and, you know, went to the radio. So I grew up listening to the radio for the most part until I had my own money and I bought a TV again, you know. But so there were like those pivotal years where I didn't rely on just having my mind fed by programming. And then doing that course meant that every time I looked at news items or anything on TV, I always saw things in layers, in the same way I would approach music. I would see, you know, I'd see the text and I'd see the imaging and I'd see the music, and I could see how by changing the music and changing what you cut and how you cut and when you cut, you can completely flip the same piece of information 10 or you know, so many different ways. There's only about 15 of us in that course basically. And then from then on going forward, I was like, oh, I can see where this is going now. And then I even worked for a BBC program on the phones. You know, I was just like an apprentice intern, and also just seeing how when people phoned up, what we were told to say to them. So we weren't necessarily always lying to them, but we weren't necessarily telling them 100% of the truth. No, and so I was just like, oh, okay, this is how the media went. And from then on in, I'd always cock my head at things that came on board, so then I could see how it would be that not everything is necessarily to be believed hook, line and sinker. And you know, I saw the power of it there and then, and it never left me basically.
What you're saying really brings me to something that I like talking about, is that, you know, when we're learning to have compassion for people on their journey, you know, some people are never going to wake up. And that's just the reality of it. That's just, you know, it's in their contract, whatever it is. So that's one way to let go of how this can look for people around you. Maybe that family member you've been speaking to for years will never get it. And it's okay. It's to, you know, our personal growth and knowing the self is understanding that that's a reality and to be at peace with that. But something I say all the time is that, you know, they're right according to their perspective. Everybody is correct according to their perspective of how things look for them. And, you know, our perspective is shaped by our beliefs and all of that. So, You know, when I heard that somewhere, I don't remember where I heard it, but it was very profound for me because it helped me understand more that, oh, yeah, we really all are on our own journey, but we're also so many fractals of the one source, you know, just experiencing something different. And it's constantly just giving us feedback of what we want and what we don't want and knowing more of the self. So yeah, it's what you were talking about with the perspectives and the media just reminded me of wanting to talk about that.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, it kind of made things easier for me to sit with, especially during that time, even though there were still levels of frustration. But then also I saw how people kind of like moved en masse, not well, not on huge mass, but there was a mass movement from the mainstream into the alternative space. But then I was able to very quickly recognize how manipulative the
Yes.
alternative space was as well. And especially for people who just kind of crash landed out of that reality into a
Yes.
new reality, but then weren't doing any of the deeper work. And
Yeah.
they then were able to be manipulated into what we call hopium. Basically, it's like it's going to happen then, it's going to happen then. You know, when people are
Yes.
like brought into this wave of expectation, you know, that something's going to happen on this particular date and then it didn't. So they crash land. And you can do that a couple of times before people start to get really despondent, really bitter, and just kind of caught in between these two realities of like, where, you know, who am I? Where can I go? Who am I going to be? And then pulling back again and realizing there are people who recognize that there was going to, in my opinion, that there was going to be this leap from mainstream
Yes.
into alternative and saw an opportunity because there were people that were out there that were doing very well financially
Yeah.
as a result of the move, you know, and it was stunning to watch. You know, I'm not that I'm just not that genius, evil genius to kind of jump on and take on board, you know, that when people need something new to kind of like manipulate them in that way. So, and I see that there are people that are still caught in that kind of alternative space where that in itself is really playing with people's minds and hearts and expectations. And
Yeah.
what would help in those areas is now the invitation for people to go within instead of just, you know, thinking that everyone is working for, you know, undercover agents of, and maybe they
Exactly.
are, you know, like
Exactly.
undercover agents of the state, but it doesn't mean that you should despise everyone or mistrust anyone. Just have discernment because there are people that are not there for the good of everyone. But then also maybe if we are doing more of our own work, then you can be like, okay, I can hear what they're saying, but some of what they're saying may be true or has to be true actually to draw you in, but allow
Totally.
it not to be all and everything. No.
Definitely. And discernment's one of the big things I talk about as well. It's actually key
Mm,
because we are so privileged to have access to all of this information and very quickly. It's an incredible tool
mm,
if used wisely and maturely. And building discernment it's a very, very important skill for us to learn right now because, and you know, as we're seeing figures and movements fall, you know, where we once held them on a pedestal, this is showing us, it's a space to show us that, uh, you know, we aren't just looking for the guru to save us now. This is like you have to save yourself to move through this evolution. You need discernment. You need to find the peace amongst the chaos. You know, this is something, yeah, I'm huge in believing is like, okay, it's not going to stop being chaotic for a little bit. You know, there's
mm,
going to be still plenty of crumbling to happen. So how can you move through that more gracefully?
mm.
What does that look like for you? But yeah, you know, it's also moving away from any kind of dogma and propaganda
Mm.
in anything. And I talk about this even in spirituality. There's
Yeah.
dogma and propaganda in that. And it's, you know, being a part of that in the church for me. I could see, and I'm not saying every church is bad or every facet of even the bad churches are bad. It's just that, you know, that organized, those organized spaces that don't encourage thinking, you are a victim or a potential victim to dogma and propaganda. And this is every single space you can think about in society. So we're really being encouraged to think, to use our brains, to use our critical thinking skills and learn how to critically think.
Yeah.
Because part of what you were talking about there too was if we can critically think, then we can have better discussions. Then we can collaborate better. Then we can create better futures, you know, by coming together. But if we see only this side and that side, that's not the way we evolve. It's not how they did it in ancient times. They had councils and, you know, people came together in specific areas and they listened to each other. And I think that's something that's lacking as well in our culture is we don't actually listen to people. We listen just to hear the space of where we can talk, where we can sound more knowledgeable, you know, and give our 2 cents. But what if that person that you don't agree with 99% of what they're saying, what if they have 1% of something that you might learn from them? And I know that's hard. You know, sometimes there's specific times where you can't talk with people, and that's discernment in itself to know that, okay, if I can't have a mature conversation that's open and it's a conversation, then it's probably not best to go into those topics with that person, you know, because I think we're in this, and this is part of the propaganda mindset, is that we have to change the other person's mind. Because we're right, but we need to, this is a space of being held in this same consciousness we're trying to move away from, is believing that there is only 2 sides. You know, there's more than 2 sides. So we need to just listen, collaborate, be kind to each other, just go, yeah, I don't agree, but it doesn't mean I don't like you. I just don't agree with that, but let's have a discussion around it because maybe we can get somewhere through that discussion.
Yeah, there's so much there. Yeah, definitely there are not 2 sides. And if we think about the way that modern education has been for us pretty much worldwide, is like, if it's not that, then it's that, you know,
Yes.
or you know, and there's no in between, or nothing else is possible. Or if you dare to come up with an alternative, or if you dare to question something, you know, are you qualified enough to ask the question? It's like, well, of course, you know, I'm a human being on the face of the planet, breathing, seeing something, and I've got a question, so I'm entitled to have a question. And I think any area where your mere questions are attacked, or the idea that you don't believe something because you're supposed to, because you come from this thing, is such narrow, dogmatic, cultish thinking that like, I think any time you find that yourself in those areas, you know, for any time I find myself in people that are not even able to hear something other than what they believe in, I know that they're just not able, they're just not ready to. And it, again, comes from the point of view of not knowing yourself and not being solid in yourself. Because if you're not solid in yourself, then you are going to use your opinions to form your identity. And the minute someone questions your identity, it's going to feel like a personal attack. And you're not going to understand that you latched onto that way of thought to be your identity, because you're not in yourself, you're not in your mind, you're not in your heart, you're not operating from a place of critical thinking, discernment. And these are the things that we never get taught. You know, any questioning of authority from the time that we're kids at school gets pushed down. You know, you get called a troublemaker, or these days a conspiracy theorist. If you dare go, well, what about this? Isn't this possible? Couldn't this happen? Just questions like that, you know, not even coming up with this is the other way. There could be multiple layers of ways. And I think the thing that has kept us trapped, again, I'll say, is because all of these things are peppered with elements of truth. Because to have a portion of it that's believable before you then kind of put on the bit that's going to keep people trapped in the deception.
Definitely.
But when you start to see the pattern of, oh, okay, there's a truth, or there's an untruth. And I think as well there is some benefit in kind of looking at these alternative narratives. You
Yep.
don't have to believe them, but I
Yep.
think there's benefit in hearing what other people think, even if you think it's wacky, it's crazy, it's mad. But it just gives you an idea of where other people are coming from. And
Yep.
then sometimes in knowing all of these different little rabbit holes and ideas that people have, when you pull out, you can see how things are connected and maybe see a bigger picture. There's you know, the mainstream will go, anyone who looks at anything that doesn't come out of our channels is a fool and unintelligent, and again, if people are not in their own space, in their own heart, in their own knowing, we'll just think, oh well, my favorite celebrity said that I'm a fool if I don't do this, so therefore I'm a fool, I won't do it. That's the
Yep.
power of like a complete stranger has over your own direction. So if you're not prepared to at least look at something, even if you kind of like want to write it off, just the awareness of it existing just
Yep.
opens up your awareness. That's all it does. You don't have to believe it, just open up your awareness. And I think the more that we can just be more aware of the way that other people think, you don't have to
Yeah.
take a stance. It's just like, okay, that's where they're coming from. That's where they're coming from there. I can kind of see why they got there, even though I don't even want to go there. And it just
Exactly.
frees you, I feel.
Does. And we're being curious. Like if you're actually curious about that person's point of view rather than saying they're wrong, that's
Mm,
because the one I believe it's like they're just wrong. But if we're actually going, oh, well, why do you believe that? Like, I'm actually curious, if I take away the who cares if one of us is right or wrong, it doesn't even matter. But I'm just curious in why you actually think like that. Like,
mm,
let's talk about it because there's maybe parts of the puzzle that I don't know about that I haven't considered. And I know in myself that I've been in situations where I have been curious and I haven't been curious.
mm,
And the times where I haven't been, I had a point to prove,
mm,
and so, if we do look beyond that, it's going to help us. And there's no wonder that we're in this position, and it is most of the mindset here because success has been built
mm,
off knowledge, and with all of that knowledge, you build the ego,
mm,
so if certain institutions or whoever, it could just be your own institution, of having to believe that you're right or be right, you are not going to look at, I know that there's some beautiful archaeologists and people that are finding incredible things at the moment, and they're faced with people that cannot have this information presented to them that they're finding and discovering now because it rocks the previous history or the timeline, or it's like, oh man, like what if we're on the precipice of this massive discovery for humanity, but we're too close-minded to even hear it,
mm,
or consider that maybe we were wrong. And I think that's huge. Like I know I've definitely been there where it feels scary to be wrong. And now I think back and I'm like, why was it so scary to
mm,
to consider that I was wrong? But it was because I had a certain identity around being right in those certain areas. And I think that's what our success mindset has been based off. It's knowledge. And if you go to uni, you do this degree, that information's relevant for the rest of your life and centuries beyond. It's like, no,
exactly.
that's not how things evolve. Like a scientist should ask questions, and that's how they constantly do experiments, is by trial and error. So,
Mm,
we have to get back into that mindset, but this is where what you're consuming mentally, and listening to in all types of different media is important, because if we're not thinking that way, then we are sold that there's one way, there's experts, they cannot be questioned, all of that. But I know I've had some funny looks by people in this community because, and outside, because I believe in certain types of modern medicine for certain things. I believe that there's a space for modern medicine. And it's like what we were talking about before. It's like in between. I try alternative as much as I can, but there's a space for modern medicine. And sometimes people need or we can work with both. You know, there's cultures around the world that get energy healers in or indigenous healers in to like help in the hospitals. So it's like if we can evolve to that space, it just means we're opening our mind view of how things can be. But yeah, it's, you know, it's really exploring that there's more than 2, 3 options. There's maybe even 10, 12, 16, whatever it is, you know.
Yeah. If you're thinking about the future that you want to be part of creating, put it out there. What would you like to see?
I think, you know, what we've been talking about, I'll break it down. If we can learn compassion, it really will take us quite far. If we are just, first of all, compassionate with ourselves and we learn how to do that, you know, if we make a mistake, go, oh, I knew better than that. Why did I do that? We can go in a whole spiral of just guilt and shame, you know, around mistakes. It's like toddlers make mistakes every day. I know that I don't beat my boys up if they make a mistake. They're learning. So are we. So self-compassion first on your healing journey, and knowing that you only know what you know until you're presented with different information, then you can choose different, you know, and then we can extend it once we're practicing that self-compassion, then we can extend that out into humanity. We can extend it out into, you know, as far as we can go. So I really think that's big. I do talk a lot about working from the heart space. So seeing through the eyes of the heart, what would your heart see in that person? You know, is there a space of understanding why that person may have done what they did? How did they grow up? Do they even know what love is? You know, what we're expecting of that person. Do they even know what that looks like or feels like? Have they experienced it before? So seeing through the eyes of the heart, you know, listening to your own heart. And to do that, we need to take space for ourselves. We need to remove distractions, go into nature, you know, go into meditation, really go into your creativity as well. So I think starting there is just really important, and you know, everything can just evolve from that space, I think, because what we tune into the heart will give us all the answers we need for ourselves, but it will also pull you where you need to be for the evolution of humanity and where you are being called to serve alongside all of us, you know, as a collaboration.
Perfect. I love it. I love it. Thank you so much. And can you just share with everyone if you've got something coming up that you want to talk about, and also where we can find you?
Yep, so you can find me on YouTube. It's Natasha J. Black on YouTube. And then I've just got my email list, so it's very simple here. The thing that I've got ongoing and what's most alive at the moment is my New Earth Mystery School. That is something that I bring through the journey that I've been on, the information that I've learned about through ancient wisdom, indigenous cultures, all the threads that are similar that we can bring into this like where we're at today, so that we can evolve back to real empowerment and understanding what we're capable of. So yeah, I share online healings through that, online classes. There's prizes drawn every month, and it's just a nice space where people are really learning how to know thyself on a very deep level. And yeah, it's amazing. I love being there.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Natasha.
Thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Natasha, for sharing your story with me, and thank you for listening. If you got value from this episode, I encourage you to share it with your friends and family and anyone that you feel would benefit from the wisdom of my guest. Also, leave a review. Tell me what you loved about this episode. And if you want to find out more about me, you can come to my website. It's carolmaywhittick.com, CarolMaywhittick.com. You can also connect with me on Facebook or LinkedIn under Carol May Whittick, and Instagram, Casmic, CAZMICK. Until the next episode, take care. Thank you.